With that, the next gentleman I also think does not need a very extended introduction because I'm sure everyone in the room knows him, and if you do not, you should get to know him because he's a great guy to know. And that's a gentleman that I consider a friend. I hope he reciprocates, but Hadi Partovi, CEO of Codeorg. Hadi. Here's your clicker.
Hi, everybody. I need to lower this a little bit. I had some slides to present, but first I just want to say thank you for inviting me here, and thank you to Anthony, and of course I consider you a friend, and thank you to Governor Hutchinson for convening so many folks in such an important cause, and thank you in particular for your leadership on this issue. I hope one day to meet your granddaughter and to see where she ends up, but the story of how she inspired you to get behind computer science has been one that I've told many, many times, and has been so impactful, not only in Arkansas, but even throughout the country. I have slides because I'm not as good at presenting without slides, so please bear with me. We'll see how these work. And I think the first thing coming is a video, because I like to start all of my presentations with a video. Code.org launched initially as a project just to make a video to inspire people, and we tried to tell our story through videos as much as possible.
So, what grade are you in?
Second.
10th grade?
First grade.
I was in 8th grade when I learned to program.
I got my first computer when I was in 6th grade.
What gets me excited is being able to fix people's problems.
You can express yourself, you can build things from an idea.
Computer science is the basis for a lot of the things that college students and professionals will do for the next 20 or 30 years.
I like programming because I like helping people.
I get the opportunity to build something that's going to make people's life easier.
I think it's the closest thing we have to a superpower.
Getting started is the most important part.
I'm a beginner myself, and I want you to learn with me.
One of my favorite things about that video is how old it feels, because almost every one of the folks in that video are either former presidents, ex-presidents, or founders of companies who've even moved on. And I'm so excited to imagine what the next generation of folks who get into computer science are, folks who are going in through our school system today, who are going to be the future founders and creators of our economy. I also want to start with my own personal story. As we talk about computer science, many of you have heard my story, but those of you who don't, why I do this work is very personal to me. This is a picture of me growing up in Tehran, Iran, with my twin brother. And soon after this photo was taken, our country broke out into a revolution. The country had basically an Islamic government, and I started living in what turned out to be a police state. And soon after, the neighboring Iraq invaded us, and I spent most of my childhood basically living in a police state by day and then in a basement at night just holding my ears while our neighborhood was getting bombed. It was basically a terrible place to raise a child. And for me, learning computer science was really an escape, because one day my parents brought home a magical gift. My dad brought a Commodore 64 home that he had gotten in Italy, but this actually wasn't the magical gift, because unlike today's iPads and iPhones, it had no apps, no games, no software. The gift was a book, an introduction to basic programming, and there, with basically nothing better to look forward to in my life, I poured myself into this book and realized that with computer science, if you can dream it, if you can imagine it, you can build it, and that basically was my pathway to a better life. And so when I came to the United States as a young immigrant, I basically had the opportunity to see the American dream in this country, and I basically started work at as early as 15 years old, before it was even legal to hire me. I was too young, I didn't have proper immigration status, and I could still get a really high-paying job as a coder, and I learned at a very early age how desperately America's economy needs people with these talents. And you know, I have had a wonderful career in tech as a result of that, and the reason I started Code.org is this realization that the pathway to opportunity that I had isn't available today to every American. It's something that enabled me to reach success, and we all in this country think of America as the land of opportunity. If there's one thing that unites us, it's this idea that if you work hard and work smart, you can get somewhere. and that idea doesn't feel like it's working for every American. And a lot of that is because of technology's impact on our workforce. It's not the only reason, but it's certainly one of the reasons. We all know that today's workforce is gradually getting replaced by computers and software and automation, and the future of work in 20 years is far more digital than today. If you imagine a kindergarten today, somebody's grandchild today starting kindergarten, they're going to be graduating into the workforce in the late 2030s. So imagine when it's almost 2040, what skills will that student need to learn? Will it be the stuff that you learned in high school, or is it going to be this new technical stuff? The answer is really obvious just if you look at current trends. It's also obvious if you look at the value of a university education. This is data that just came out a few weeks ago, comparing the return on investment in a university degree in computer science or engineering compared to the average of all other university degrees. A university degree in computer science is 6 times more valuable than an average college degree. And this just shows the imbalance in terms of what our economy needs, what the future is paying for, and what most of our students are studying. And if you compare what students have access or don't, it shows that difference. That same difference, as Governor Hutchinson mentioned, is when you think about the importing of talent that America is doing. Because states like Arkansas aren't producing enough computer scientists relative to jobs that are available at companies like Walmart. And you'd think, okay, well, Arkansas maybe is importing a talent. What are the states that are exporting computer science talent? There are no states in the United States that are exporting computer science talent. Every state in America is importing computer science talent because our students aren't learning this field. And in fact, we are importing so much computer science talent that when you look at high-skilled visas, 2/3 of all high-skilled immigration is just for this field. The H-1B visa is almost entirely a computer science visa because our schools aren't teaching this skill and our students aren't necessarily learning it. Now, when you talk about these opportunities, I regularly get asked, is computer science basically about coding? And most politicians and governments think about it as a pathway towards economic opportunity. But that's not the only reason to be teaching computer science. Even after students have the economic opportunity met, there's still a fundamental set of reasons computer science should be just part of basic education. First is because it's better preparation for life regardless of what career you go into. When I went to high school, every student would learn how the digestive system works or how electricity lights a light bulb or about the Pythagorean theorem, regardless of whether you want to become a biologist, an electrician, or a mathematician. These are things everybody needs to learn. And in today's day and age, it's equally important for students to learn what an algorithm is, or how the internet works, or how AI and machine learning are changing society. Even if you don't become a coder or a data scientist, these are basic things that you should know, just like you understand what photosynthesis is. Computer science can also prepare students better for college and career. Research now shows that even for students who don't want to study computer science as their long-term career, as early as elementary school, computer science students outperform in reading, writing, math, and science exams. They do better at problem solving and executive functioning skills. By high school, they outperform in math. They are 17% more likely to enroll in four-year colleges compared to equally situated peers. They outperform in problem solving in university, and they also make higher wages after graduation, regardless of what path they go into. It's like an ingredient that if you added to a student's high school and K-12 experience, every other course they study in, they actually do slightly better, and because of the way it helps teach you how to think and teaches problem solving. And people then think computer science is for the math kids. The most interesting research for me is recent research shows that language skills are 8 times more likely to predict a student's success at computer science than math skills. This is not something that's just for the math nerds. This is something that the stereotypes people have about are just completely wrong. Our bilingual students, our English language learners, the ones who are learning 2 languages when they're young, should be our best computer scientists. And that's something that we need to think about rather than thinking that this is for the math kids. Lastly, computer science is just more fun. Because it's more fun, it makes all of school better. School is, every year that our schools progress without changing the curriculum is getting 1 year more outdated. Students today are largely learning the same stuff that students were learning over 100 years ago. And it feels older and older because they're learning how to memorize and rote repetitive skills at long multiplication or long division. And after she'd finished doing her work, she'd say, "Alexa, what's 233 times 378? And then she'd be checking her work that way. And at the same time, it's so obvious that this 9-year-old already knows that a device can do this work for her, and yet she's doing it repetitively over and over just to show that she can do it just more slowly. Computer science, because of its creativity, is more engaging. Instead of memorizing and rote work, students can make beautiful art as early as 3rd grade and learn about how the angles work. By middle school, they can create games. By high school, they can create apps. And there are so many stories of amazing things students have created because of the computer science creativity and collaboration. Like this young man, Dowdy Manigat in Florida, who created an app that is a game, and inside that game is a disguised domestic abuse helpline. And he created it for young women who want to access help, but are too scared to have an app that does that. Just imagine both the life that this kid is coming from and also the creativity of creating that as part of his high school experience. Or this young lady, Sophie Saljani in Seattle, who in March, the very first month, March of 2020, when the pandemic closed things down, she made an app to help people in Seattle find which restaurants were open before Google and Yelp and others did that. Or Hannah Burr and her classmates in Massachusetts, who made an app for their friends to self-diagnose their mental health to help cope with the rise in young adult depression and mental health issues. Or this young man, Spencer Applegate, in rural Kentucky, in a high school where the poverty level is so high that almost a third of his classmates are homeless. Almost all of them are on free and reduced meal plans. And he got challenged by one of his teachers, Larry Correll, who said, "If you make something really great, I will get you a breakfast at Arby's." And for that prize, he recreated the Tetris game, which is a multi-billion-dollar gaming franchise, and this young man created it as part of his computer science principles class in high school. And this shows that talent is everywhere and opportunity is not. And we need more stories like this in every school and in every state to help not only give these students economic opportunity, but simply to prepare them for life. In the words of students these days, computer science has become one of their favorite subjects besides dance, music, and art. And this is so important because the adults might think about the economic opportunities. The students just enjoy it because it's more fun than memorizing dates, and it's more fun than multiple choice questions. You get to create stuff. That's one of the most important things as a parent when you send kids to school. You don't want to have to tell them, do your homework, and they're like, I don't want to do my homework. You know, this is actually something that they usually enjoy. And in the words of teachers, Michael Clark was one of our first teachers who basically said, I decided to try this in my 8th grade class, and I've never, ever seen my students so engaged. And this is a type of message I've heard from so many teachers who've taken the plunge to embrace computer science in their classrooms and have seen this reaction from the students themselves. And so at the same time as my earlier comments or Governor Hutchinson's, we're talking about the national security and national competitive importance. We also, if you think from the perspective of the student themselves, making class and school more engaging is just as important a reason to teach computer science. Now, the challenge is, despite all of our work, most schools don't teach computer science. We've just got past the bar on high schools, among public schools in the United States. Public high schools have just passed the majority line. But if you look at all of K through 12, the majority don't teach computer science. And what's worse is if you look at the access compared to income level, and I'm not sure why my slides showed this way without axes labeled, but the y-axis here shows how many of the schools have access to computer science, and the x-axis shows the socioeconomic level of the neighborhood they're in. The wealthier schools, the majority teach computer science. The less wealthy schools in less wealthy neighborhoods, it's much, much less, almost half as many offer computer science, which means access to opportunity is directly linked to the income of the neighborhood you grew up in. The zip code you grew up in determines whether you have these doors open to you. And this graph is about as un-American as anything I've seen because we live in a country that believes in equality of opportunity, yet that access is directly linked to your zip code that you grew up in, which is not something we should think of as being okay in our country. There's lots of other problems that we can fix that are hard. Solving this problem is not hard. It just requires doing it. And we've shown year after year that we can make progress, and the numbers are getting better every single year. So our shared reason for all being here is because we all believe that opportunity shouldn't be determined based on your gender or the color of your skin or your zip code. And our shared vision is that every student in every school should have at least the opportunity to learn computer science. And this isn't an unsolvable problem. There are many unsolvable problems, especially in education. This is a totally solvable problem that, thanks to the leadership of so many people in this room, thanks to the start that Asa Hutchinson brought to this movement in 2015, we are making progress every single year. And if I look back on the last decade, it's been incredible how much has changed in just 8 years. I'll first share Code.org's numbers. This says 1 million teachers on Code.org. This is the status of where things were 2 years ago when I was last here for Arkansas's event. In just 2 years through a pandemic, that number has doubled to 2 million teachers. 2 years ago, we had 50 million projects created by students in their classrooms ever. In 2 more years of the pandemic, it's now become 170 million projects. This is the impact that public education can have on students learning computer science. And these are only Code.org's numbers, which is maybe 1/3 or 40% of what's happening in US schools in computer science. If you look at the whole country, Governor Hutchinson, your numbers are 1 year out of date. Just a few weeks ago, we announced that 51% of all US high schools offer computer science. So after 8 years of this work, we've gone from 1 out of 10 to the majority of all public high schools offering computer science. And this is so important because it shows this is a problem we can solve. In fact, we're more than halfway there when it comes to public high schools. We have the rest of K through 12 to go through. And this is really thanks to everybody in this room who has been doing this work. This is such an important achievement. If you want to tweet this news, because it's only a few weeks old, this is a QR code. So those of you who, through the pandemic, learned about how to scan QR codes from anywhere you are in this room, you're welcome to scan this QR code and hit the retweet button, because that shows the power of a teacher-led movement, the power of a grassroots movement to change education. It's also kind of fun to use QR codes in slides. It's my new pandemic learned trick. So it's one of the things I'm going to bring from the pandemic into all future presentations. The bigger picture beyond just the 51% of schools, oh great, this slide also, the colors got changed. I'm not sure, well, hopefully I'll read some of this. In terms of what's happened to the United States, I'll read this slide from memory because the fonts don't show up. All 50 states have now passed policies that impact computer science in the K through 12 curriculum. State and local and federal government combined have allocated over $350 million for teaching computer science. And Arkansas was the first state to fund computer science out of its budget, but now almost 20 other states have followed, and the federal government as well. And over 100,000 teachers have gone through professional learning programs to begin teaching computer science. Like the teachers here, this is all throughout the country. And if you think globally, the picture has reached 70 countries who've announced plans to teach computer science or to train teachers. Over 2 million teachers have begun teaching computer science just on Code.org alone. And the Hour of Code campaign that for Code.org was the way we started spreading the word of this has reached 1.3 billion served. And I can't believe I have to read this slide without the words that describe those numbers. But still, despite all this work, most schools don't teach computer science. And we're at a point now in 2021 where this is a problem that needs to become not just an issue, but an issue of national urgency. Besides the schools offering it, the students enrolled in computer science are a small, small minority. So it's great that over half of public high schools teach computer science. If you look at student enrollment, it's less than 5% of our high school students enrolled in this class. And this gets to what Governor Hutchinson was talking about in terms of the 3 states that now require computer science for graduation, and what can we do to get more students enrolled even in the schools that offer computer science. As we exit the pandemic, knock on, there's a little bit of wood here, and hopefully we're reaching the sort of tail end of this terrible, terrible disease. But as we reach think about the world after the pandemic, there's a number of ways that the pandemic has impacted education that really make computer science at an inflection point as we think about the new normal of education after the pandemic. There's multiple different ways that this pandemic has made computer science more important than ever and more possible to teach than ever. The first is that in the United States, 90% of students have one-on-one computing devices. Before the pandemic, this wasn't true. At this point, almost every student in the country has a device that was given to them by their school so they could do distance learning. And now that most schools have reopened and distance learning is over, these schools still have these devices. What are they going to do with them? They're not going to be able to, they can teach some of the older curriculum on computers, but if we're giving students computers, let's also teach them not only how to use the devices, but also how to understand how they work and how to create technology using these devices. The other change from the pandemic is how many teachers have had to basically, in an emergency situation, learn new digital skills, from learning how to teach over Zoom to using Slido or Kahoot or all these other technical tools. Every teacher in this country had to up their technical game in the last 2 years. It was trial by fire, and we all learned that our teachers are motivated enough that when push comes to shove, they can change. Education in this country changed so dramatically in just 1 year, and it gave every parent, student, and most importantly, teachers in schools the knowledge that the US education system is flexible. The US education system can change. So as we return back to schools reopening, let's maintain that spirit of flexibility and change as we envision adding computer science to the curriculum and recognize that our teachers are much more tech savvy today than just 2 years ago. The third major change from the pandemic, and this really changes the economic picture, is as the world has closed down and all of us experience these closures of businesses, one thing that has changed is the nature of work. These are all logos of companies that said they will hire software engineers or computer science professionals anywhere. And this wasn't true before the pandemic, that so many jobs are basically remote first jobs. When Code.org started, one of our tools for advocacy was pointing out in every state how many job openings there are and how many students are graduating in computer science fields. And the number one state with the most open jobs, unsurprisingly, was California with 70,000 open computing jobs. So can you guess which state now is the number 2 largest state with the most open computing jobs? It is the state of anywhere, the remote work. The number 2 largest employing state in computer science is all of the states, which means whether you live in Kentucky, in Arkansas, in Wisconsin, it doesn't matter whether you're in a small town or in an urban neighborhood, the second largest source of computing jobs in the country will come to you. You don't need to go there. And this makes a major difference in why a small town school system should think about this field. It's not just about graduating students who'll go to a coastal city to learn computer science. It's about bringing economic opportunity to areas that have been damaged by the closures of the businesses. So these are all reasons why computer science is more important than ever. We need to remind people that work isn't only about tech jobs. It's a foundational part of basic education. Because of this, Code.org is launching a new, this also isn't showing up because of my slide formatting. We're launching a new curriculum called CS Connections to connect computer science to math and science and social studies and art, to help teachers teach computer science connected to other curriculum, to remind people that this is something that is connected to all of education. We need to remind teachers, parents, and educators that computer science isn't just about coding. It's about creativity and collaboration. It's about making school more engaging for students and teaching soft skills that are more important in today's workforce than what schools typically teach. And then lastly, probably my final point, is that today computer science is about solving global problems. When I studied computer science as a young child, it was much more about math. It was about writing the code to calculate factorials and to calculate math equations. When Mark Zuckerberg was studying computer science, it was about sharing information on the internet. in this day and age, we need schools to recognize that computer science is going to unlock the solutions to curing world diseases, to cleaning our oceans, to addressing climate change, to addressing global poverty and hunger, to addressing gender equality. These are many of the problems that the next generation is inheriting from us. Our youngest generation all care about solving these global problems, and computer science is one of the keys to solving almost every global problem you think about. As we hand the next generation all these issues from the past, let's also hand them the one skill that will help them solve these problems in the future. I truly believe that in this country we can reach every US student by 2030, and then globally that computer science can reach every student in the entire world by 2040. The speed at which this movement has grown and even accelerated makes this possible. There's now 3 states where every single student is going to learn computer science as part of their graduation requirements. And we aren't yet pushing that all states must require computer science for graduation, because many states aren't yet ready. They don't, if it's not even offered in the schools, you can't demand that the students must learn it, because then the students won't graduate. But if we think 9 years ahead, it is absolutely something we could do, just given it took us only 8 years to get to the majority of schools offering computer science. And so in the next 9 years, I believe computer science can become a graduation requirement for every single US student. And what we do in the US is impacting the entire world as well. This is a global movement that is being led by the work that we do in this country. And education in this country isn't something that the rest of the world usually looks up to. You know, we all as Americans see these, reports about America falling behind in math scores and science scores, and most Americans aren't proud of our education system, but most Americans are proud of what happens in this country in technology. We're the country that invented the computer, we invented the internet, we invented the smartphone, we invented social media, we invented e-commerce, and because of those things, when it comes to computer science education, we are leading the world. And so if we, just like Arkansas has established this as a graduation requirement to lead the rest of the country, our country can lead the entire world in teaching computer science to every child. And that's such a bigger, really inspirational thing to think about in terms of each of you working from whatever location you're doing. You're not only helping create national change, you're creating global change, because when it comes to technology and computer science, our country is a beacon for the rest of the world. I want to close and saying this is such a community effort, and it's only been possible thanks to so many people working together, whether it's from individual teachers like Juan Lonzano in my city of Seattle, who brought computer science to their schools, and then from one individual school, their entire district got on board, to then all the states that are working on towards computer science plans, all the way to 70 countries who have established plans at the national level. All of this work starts from individual educators, whether at the classroom level or at the state level or at the at local governments, making this part of their plan to change the world. And this effort is changing the lives of students everywhere. When I think back on my own story of coming to the United States, there's a lot of things that weren't going right for me when I came to America. I was learning a new language. I was learning a new culture. My family was quite poor, and I had no friends, and I didn't even have a sense of fashion or how to dress for my first day of school. But what I really had going for me was a deep and really well-experienced fundamental learning of computer science, how to write code, how to create software, and that helped me go leaps and bounds ahead of my peers, because I could start work and pay for college and get into the best jobs much faster than anybody else did. And if you think about the students all around the world or all around our country that lack opportunity, like Araceli Casillas, who's the first student from her immigrant family to go to college, and she's learning computer science principles and going to UW and now majoring in computer science, or like Spencer Applegate, the student I mentioned from Kentucky, or students from all around not only different cities, but different countries. These students are collectively changing the face of computer science. The face of who is learning computer science is more diverse today than at any time in history. The students learning computer science at this point are almost majority students of color, and we're getting closer and closer each year to getting to a 50-50 gender distribution because it's being taught in public schools. This is only possible thanks to educators, so I want to close by thanking the over 2 million teachers on Code.org and I'm sure 2 million more teachers on other platforms that have begun teaching computer science. Thanks to all these teachers, we're changing the world of computer science in the face of education. Thank you so much. Sorry, I forgot another step. I'm here to present the Computer Science Education Leadership Award to Governor Hutchinson for the start he brought to our nation, for being the first state in the country to take such a large step in terms of establishing not only one policy, but a whole suite of policies in computer science. Arkansas has been leading the nation in so many different ways. Mr. Governor Hutchinson, please come and accept this small gift.
Great presentation. Excellent. I've got something for you. So we have, please be seated. Thank you, Hadi, for this recognition, but I also wanted to present to you, since you've been to Arkansas a number of times, you're qualifying to be an Arkansas traveler. And this is our presentation to you, which recognizes you as an ambassador for the state. Now, I started to have a special designation as an Arkansas coder traveler because of the work that you've done, not just here in the States, but across the globe. So, Hadi, congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Hadi. Thank you, Governor Hutchinson. And Hadi, sorry about the slides. You did a phenomenal job. Let's give him another hand for remembering what was on them. And I don't know what you were upset about. The outfit I thought was great. I think that's come back in vogue now. So you might pull that one back out of the closet. So no, thank you, Hadi, and thank you for your leadership. Okay.